Pennywise was never truly defeated. He was not killed. He was not banished. He was left unfinished. Hidden inside Stephen King's universe is a boy most readers ignored, a boy who does not fight monsters, he edits them. In this story, Pennywise faces something worse than fear, a hand that decides whether he belongs in reality at all. No final battle, no salvation, only a drawing that Pennywise cannot survive. Watch until the end, because the last truth is the one King never spelled out. The first thing Pennywise felt was resistance. Not fear, he knew fear intimately, the way a butcher knows muscle and bone, but resistance, a thin wrongness in the air, like trying to push a needle through stone. It made him pause in a way he had not paused in centuries. This place does not want me drawn, he thought. That alone should have been impossible. Pennywise existed where imagination bled into matter. Every world worth feeding on had seams, thin spots where belief grew soft and pictures hardened into laws. He slipped through those seams the way mold crept through bread. He had always done so, always would. Except now. The place around him was unfinished, not dark, not light, not even empty. It was preliminary, like a thought before language reached it. The ground beneath his feet, if feet was the right word, resembled paper that had not yet decided whether it was blank or ruined. Above him, there was no sky, only a pale suggestion of one, the idea of up without the commitment. And somewhere nearby, scratch. A sound too small to be thunder and too deliberate to be wind. Pennywise smiled automatically, the way a spider's legs flex when it senses vibration. "Hello," he called, his voice settling into a friendly register. A clown's voice, a child's invitation. "Anyone there?" The sound came again. Scratch, scratch. A pencil. That was when Pennywise understood. Not fully, understanding came later, with pain, but enough to feel something rare and unwelcome tighten in the core of his being. This was not a mind he had entered. This was a hand. Patrick Danville sat at a table that did not exist. He was used to that. The table appeared only because he expected it to be there. Its surface was smooth because smoothness was useful. The chair beneath him had no back because he did not need one. He was thin, pale, and young in the way some people stayed young long after the calendar insisted otherwise. His hair hung in his eyes, and his eyes were focused on the paper in front of him. The paper, unlike the table, refused to cooperate. Patrick had drawn lines before that screamed, erased things that begged to be spared, corrected errors large enough to swallow worlds. He knew the rules of his gift as well as they could be known, which was to say imperfectly. He could not create from nothing. He could not fix everything. He could only intervene, only alter what was already dangerously close to breaking. That was why he was here. The pencil hovered above the page. Patrick frowned. "That's new," he murmured. The paper trembled, not visibly, but in the way a headache announces itself before pain arrives. Patrick had felt that tremble only a few times before. Each time, it meant the same thing. Something outside the story was pressing in. He lowered the pencil. The line he drew refused to stay straight. It bent away from itself, like a worm sensing salt. Patrick's mouth went dry. He erased the line. The eraser left a gray smear that pulsed once, faintly, like a dying heartbeat. "Okay," Patrick said softly. "Okay. I see you." The air across from him thickened. A shape formed, not all at once, but in drafts. First a suggestion of color, then a face that assembled itself piece by piece, as if remembering how to be seen. A clown stood there. White face, red mouth stretched too wide. Orange hair like a joke told by fire. "Hiya, kid," the clown said, tipping an invisible hat. "Name's Pennywise, but you can call me I know what you are," Patrick said. That stopped the clown mid-introduction. Pennywise blinked. "Well," he said pleasantly, "that's no fun. Where I come from, introductions matter." "You come from hunger," Patrick replied, "and leftovers." The smile twitched. That, too, was new. Pennywise circled the boy, shoes making no sound on the half-real floor. He tasted the space around Patrick, searching for the familiar spice of terror. It was not there. Instead, there was something else. Authority. Not dominance, not power. Authority was quieter than that. It was the difference between a scream and a correction made in red ink. "You've seen me before," Pennywise said. It was not a question. "In books, in dreams, in the sticky places where thoughts go to rot." Patrick shook his head. "No," he said. "I've seen what you do. That's different." The pencil in Patrick's hand vibrated. Pennywise's gaze snapped to it. "Ah, so that's how it is. You draw," Pennywise said lightly. "That's cute. Lots of children draw monsters." Patrick met his eyes at last. "These monsters do not usually notice," he said. Pennywise laughed. The sound filled the half-space, echoed oddly, as if unsure how far it was allowed to travel. "You think you're special," he said. "But imagination belongs to me. It always has. Every nightmare, every shadow at the end of a bed, that's my pantry." Patrick considered this. Then he pressed the pencil to the page and drew a small circle. Pennywise gasped, not theatrically, instinctively. Something pinched his being, sharp and precise, like tweezers closing on a nerve. "What did you do?" he hissed. Patrick erased the circle. The pain vanished. "I tested," Patrick said. "You reacted." Pennywise's grin returned, slower this time. "Well," he said, "that will not do." He stepped closer, letting his form ripple. The clown melted, stretched, rearranged himself into something larger, darker, older. Legs unfolded like scaffolding, eyes multiplied. A mouth opened where a mouth should never be. Fear followed, thick, ancient, chemical. Patrick's hand shook. "Good," Pennywise thought. "There it is. Look at me," Pennywise whispered, voice sliding into Patrick's skull. "Really look. This is what you draw when the lights go out. This is what lives under the paper." Patrick did look. His breath hitched. For a moment, a dangerous, delicious moment, Pennywise felt the hook set. Then Patrick said, very quietly, "You're still performing." "What?" Pennywise snarled. "You're still choosing how to be seen," Patrick said. "That means you're still incomplete." Pennywise struck. He moved faster than fear, faster than form, becoming a blur of intent aimed straight at the boy's mind. He had devoured artists before, painters, writers, dreamers. They always tasted best. Patrick slammed the pencil down. The page flared white. Pennywise hit an invisible wall. The impact was wrong, not resistance, rejection. He recoiled, form stuttering, edges tearing like wet paint. "What are you?" Pennywise roared. Patrick stood. "I do not make monsters," he said.
"I fix margins." He turned the page. Elsewhere, far above, far below, or perhaps simply adjacent, the dark tower creaked. Not audibly, not yet. But something had shifted. A small correction had been made, and something old had noticed. Pennywise did not retreat. That was the first lie the universe told itself. What actually happened was worse. He hesitated. In all his cycles, rising, feeding, sleeping, dreaming the red dreams, hesitation had been unnecessary. Children hesitated, adults hesitated, worlds hesitated, right before they cracked. He did not. Yet here he was, hovering just beyond the edge of a boy and a piece of paper, feeling something like vertigo. "You do not belong here," Pennywise said. The words were automatic, an old reflex. He had said them to children hiding in storm drains, to adults waking in the night with their hearts racing, to creatures older than language that had wandered too close to his feeding grounds. Patrick Danville did not move. "That's what margins are for," Patrick replied. "To show where things stop." Pennywise snarled and shifted again, the clown's shape tearing into something vast and arachnoid, its legs jointed at impossible angles, its eyes glowing with a feverish hunger that had unmade civilizations in softer worlds. The air thickened with nightmare logic. Gravity bent. Distance lost meaning. Fear surged. Patrick felt it slam into him like a wave of ice water. His chest tightened. His hands went numb. And for one awful second, the pencil slipped in his fingers. "And this is how it happens," a small, terrified voice whispered inside him. "This is how you lose." The thing before him was not just a monster. It was an argument. A declaration that fear was the truest language, and that it always won in the end. Patrick swallowed. "No," he said aloud. The pencil steadied. Pennywise lunged again, not physically, not exactly, but conceptually, pushing his nature forward the way a tide pushes against sand. Images flooded Patrick's mind. Dead lights, endless hunger, children screaming into drains that had no bottom. Patrick screamed, not in terror, in effort. He dragged the pencil across the page. A line appeared. Pennywise howled. This time, it was pain. The wound was not visible. That disturbed Pennywise more than blood ever could. He recoiled, his form collapsing inward, features stuttering like a corrupted film reel. He felt less, suddenly, less anchored, less certain of his own dimensions. "You," he began, and then stopped. The word he had meant to use, boy, would not form. Patrick had not drawn Pennywise. He had drawn a boundary. The line on the page was nothing special. No symbols, no sigils, just a line, slightly crooked, running from one margin to the other. But Pennywise could not cross it. He pressed against the unseen barrier and felt something scrape away, not flesh, not thought, but definition. Pieces of him sloughed off, dissolving into gray nothing that the space around them refused to acknowledge. "What are you doing to me?" Pennywise whispered. Patrick's knees trembled. He leaned against the table that was not, breathing hard. "I'm not doing anything to you," he said. "I'm doing something around you." Pennywise laughed weakly. "You think that matters?" he sneered. "You think lines, Stop hunger? Patrick met his gaze. They stop stories, he said. Pennywise remembered stories. He remembered when they had been sharp, when belief had tasted like electricity, when children had whispered his names and drawn him on notebook paper with shaking hands. Those drawings had been invitations, doorways. This was the opposite. Patrick's page was not an invitation. It was an edit. "You can't erase me," Pennywise said, though the confidence was gone now. "Others have tried. Rituals, faith, collective belief. I outlast them all." Patrick nodded. "I know," he said. "That's why I won't erase you." Pennywise's eyes widened. The pencil moved again. Patrick turned the page and began to draw, not Pennywise, not fear, not even the boundary. He drew something harder to define. He drew space. Not emptiness exactly, but the idea of a place where something could exist if it were capable of existing there. The paper resisted him at first, wrinkling, darkening, trying to slip out of focus. Patrick pressed harder. His head pounded. Blood trickled from his nose and dotted the page. "Stop," Pennywise said, suddenly urgent. "You do not know what you're doing." Patrick smiled faintly. "Yes," he said, "I do." The drawing began to settle. Pennywise felt it immediately. The world around him, this half-formed in-between place, started to exclude him. Not violently, not cruelly, simply neutrally, like a rule being applied without emotion. He tried to change shape. The change failed. He tried to project fear. It dissipated. "What is this?" he demanded. Patrick wiped his nose with his sleeve. "This is a place where you can't finish yourself," he said. "A room with no mirrors, no audience." Pennywise staggered. For the first time since he had crawled into existence, he felt something that was not hunger, not rage, not even pain. He felt irrelevance. Far away, or perhaps directly adjacent, the dark tower shuddered. A single beam hummed, its song momentarily distorted, then corrected. Somewhere on a long road, a gunslinger paused, hand tightening on sandalwood grips, and frowned without knowing why. Pennywise screamed. The sound was ugly, stripped of humor, stripped of performance. It cracked against the space Patrick was shaping and fell apart. "You need me," Pennywise snarled. "Your worlds need monsters. Without me..." "You'll still exist," Patrick finished gently. "Just smaller." The drawing was almost done. Pennywise felt himself compressing, not shrinking, condensing. His vast, hungry nature folded inward, forced into narrower channels. He was being localized, his reach curtailed, his influence bound to specific cracks instead of open seams. "This is not death," Pennywise hissed. "No," Patrick agreed. "It's worse for you." The pencil made one final stroke. The page went still. Silence fell. The half space around them stabilized, edges firming up, rules snapping into place like cooling metal. Pennywise stood on the far side of the line now, his form reduced, simplified, not a clown, not a spider, but a suggestion of something unfinished. He glared at Patrick with hatred that burned colder than space. "This is not over," he said. Patrick sat down heavily, exhausted. "No," he said. "But now, it's contained."
Pennywise retreated, not fleeing, not vanishing, but being excluded, nudged out of relevance by a reality that had decided it could function without him in most places. As he faded, one last thought burned through his being.
There are others like this, great ones, editors.
And for the first time in his long existence, Pennywise was afraid not of death, but of revision. Patrick remained alone with the paper. He stared at it for a long time, then carefully closed the folder and set it aside. His hands shook. "I hate doing that," he whispered. But somewhere, something vital still stood. And that was enough. Patrick Danville slept for 3 days. Not the shallow, twitching sleep of fear or the drugged stupor that sometimes followed his work, but a deep, stone-heavy rest that pulled him down into himself and locked the door. Time slid past him without comment. If there were dreams, they left no residue. When he woke, the first thing he did was reach for the folder. It was still there. That mattered more than food, more than water, more even than the dull ache that lived behind his eyes like a bruise left by thought itself. Patrick sat up slowly, joints popping, and opened the folder. The page inside had changed. That, too, mattered. Pennywise did not dream. Dreaming required a self stable enough to wander. What Pennywise experienced instead was recurrence, loops of hunger replaying themselves in variations too small to matter. Except now, the loops had narrowed. He felt himself wake into limitation. The sewer was familiar. That was intentional. He had retreated into what remained certain: brick, rot, the smell of old water and old fear. Derry's underbelly welcomed him like a wound that never healed correctly. But something was wrong. The fear tasted thin. Children still existed. Adults still lied to themselves. But the ambient richness, the unconscious seasoning that once drifted down into his waiting mouth, had diminished. It was not gone. It was rationed. Pennywise reached outward, testing his influence. The reach failed. It did not snap back painfully. It simply stopped, like an arm encountering the end of a sleeve that had always been longer before. This is temporary, he told himself, but the thought lacked conviction. He tried to become the clown. The transformation stuttered. The smile fixed itself a fraction too late. The eyes refused their usual glow, settling instead into something flat, almost human. Human. The realization sent a spike of disgust through him. "No," he whispered into the dark. Something answered. Not a voice, a pressure. Patrick studied the drawing. At first glance, it looked like nothing at all, just a field of off-white, textured slightly differently in places where the pencil had pressed harder. But Patrick knew better. He leaned closer, tilting the page until the light caught the grain just right. There, a distortion. Not a picture, not a symbol, an absence with rules. The space he had drawn did not negate, it excluded. It did not erase Pennywise, nor could it. Instead, it defined a condition under which Pennywise could not fully manifest. Patrick exhaled slowly. "I did not kill you," he murmured. "I constrained you." That was the line he had learned never to cross. Creation and destruction were temptations, not tools. The tower did not need gods. It needed maintenance.
Patrick closed the folder again. He felt older now. Not physically. His reflection still showed the same slight frame, the same boyish face, but inwardly, where time accumulated differently. Each correction left residue. Each intervention cost something he could not name. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the world continued. That was the point. The pressure in the sewer increased. Pennywise recoiled instinctively, pulling himself tighter into the geometry of the place. He recognized the sensation now, not from memory, but from inference. This was oversight, the kind that did not speak unless necessary. "You interfere," Pennywise snarled into the dark. "You always interfere." The pressure did not answer. It did not need to. The tower was not a character. It was a condition. Pennywise felt himself counted, measured, found wanting. This was the true cost of the boy's drawing. Not pain, not confinement, but attention. Pennywise had always thrived in the margins, in the places where rules were suggestions and belief did the heavy lifting. Now the margins were marked. "You need me," Pennywise said, louder now, as if volume could substitute for authority. "Without me, fear stagnates. Stories rot." A ripple passed through the dark. If the tower could have replied, it might have said, "Fear adapts." Instead, the pressure eased, not in mercy, but in resolution. Pennywise understood. He was not being destroyed. He was being demoted. Patrick felt it when it happened. A subtle click, like a lock turning several floors below his awareness. He sat down abruptly, heart racing, pencil already in his hand. "No," he whispered. "I did not." He stopped. The sensation was not alarm. It was confirmation. Patrick closed his eyes. He saw a road stretching through heat-shimmered air. He saw a man walking it, boots worn thin, guns heavy at his sides. He saw the tower in the distance, not as a structure, but as a principle, a truth that insisted on standing. Patrick let the vision pass. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." He placed the pencil down. For now, there was nothing more to do. Time passed. Years, perhaps, or something like years. Pennywise adapted. He always had. He learned to work within the narrower channels left to him. He fed less often, slept more deeply. His forms simplified. He no longer reached for grand, operatic terror. He cultivated small, sharp fears instead, the kind that slip through cracks without drawing attention. He survived, but he did not grow. That was the difference. Sometimes, rarely, dangerously, he felt the pull of that unfinished place, the space where he could not follow. It gnawed at him more persistently than hunger ever had. He began to hate the boy. Not with rage, with precision. Patrick grew quieter. Those who met him, few as they were, found him polite, distant, distracted by things they could not see. He still drew, but less often. When he did, the work was careful, restrained. He had learned the cost of excess. One night, as he sat at his table, a thought occurred to him, unbidden, unwelcome. What if I had finished it? What if he had drawn Pennywise completely, fixed his form, given him edges sharp enough to erase? Patrick's hands shook. "No," he said aloud. That was the temptation.
To finish was to define. To define was to grant permanence. He closed the folder without opening it. Far below, Pennywise sensed the thought. Just a flicker, just enough to remind him that the boy still existed, that the hand still hovered somewhere above the page. The realization filled him with something dangerously close to hope. One day, Pennywise thought, you'll slip. All editors did. The tower stood. It had stood before Pennywise. It would stand after. Stories bent around it. Monsters rose and fell. Gunslingers walked their roads and walked them again. Somewhere in the vast, layered structure of reality, a small correction remained in place. A line drawn across a page that said, "No further." That line did not shine, it did not hum, it simply held. And for Pennywise, that was the cruelest ending imaginable. Because he was not destroyed, not forgotten, just unfinished.